Hello, Louise Singleton here and welcome to Louise Singleton Creations. Today I've got a tutorial for you to show you how to make this lovely resin pyramid lamp. Resin pyramids do take an awful lot of resin and I think it puts a lot of people off. But what you'll find out today is how you can make one of these pyramids with just a fraction of the resin you would use if it was going to be solid. Our first job is to do the tip of the pyramid, which doesn't require too much resin. I've measured out 1 part hardener, 1 part resin, just the same, and I'm just warming them up in some warm water, and it helps to eliminate any tiny little bubbles. And while that's just warming up, I'm just covering the support for the silicone mould with talcum powder because I found that the mould really sticks to its support and it's really hard to get out, so I just put baby powder on and remove the excess there. And now I'm going to just put the silicone mould into place, making sure it's gone in nice and smoothly and straight with no wonky bits. I have washed it thoroughly with warm soapy water and dried it with my heat gun. I like to dry it with the heat gun rather than kitchen paper or something like that because it doesn't leave any fluff. And now I'm just giving my 2 parts of resin a really good mix. What I do is I pour it from one cup to the other just to make sure I've got all the little bits of the resin and the hardener. Always make sure you mix really thoroughly. I'm just adding, I tried to show you it but it wasn't quite in shot. I'm adding some white holographic glitter and I didn't have much left, excuse me, and I found that it just wasn't enough, so I decided to add some white colour craft, was it? I can't remember what it's called. Pigment, just to really, I don't know, I just thought a white tip of the pyramid would look really good. So now I'm just pouring it very carefully into that central point, and the reason I'm being careful is I'm trying my best not to let it drip down the sides. I didn't really want drips down the side of the mould. I did get a couple but I didn't do too bad. The good thing about the TotalCast resin is the bubbles tend to just let themselves out. You don't really need to do too much heating, and I really like that about it. And here I've just got a cocktail stick. I'm just giving it a little wiggle about because if there's anywhere where a bubble will get trapped, it's right in the tip of the pyramid. So I like to just manipulate it a little bit with the cocktail stick just to make double sure that there's no air bubbles there. And I'm just giving it a quick heat, not too much. Okay, so it's 4 hours later and it's time for stage 2 of the master plan. Now I've got a water bottle here which I'm just taking the label off, and this is what's going to form the cavity inside the pyramid for the lights to go into. I'm just trimming off the very end of the bottle. Now this is the second pyramid, one of these pyramids I've made with the lights inside, and I'm still finding as I go along ways to make it better. And I did find a way to make it better in the process of doing this, which is good. I make all the mistakes so you don't have to. So what I'm going to be doing in a second, you'll see I'm going to stick it in. Oh, I'm ahead of myself here. Sorry. No, first of all, I've just put that ruler on the top just so I can see exactly where the top of the mould is, and I've made a mark and I'm going to cut that. So yeah, sorry, what I was saying is I'm going to stick it down and I used super glue, and that's normally a great thing for me. If you've seen my other videos, I use it all the time. But in this instance, the idea was I didn't mind the resin. When I poured the resin around the bottle, I didn't mind if it came up through the bottom, because I thought it would give it some extra stability. But you will find out later on in the video why that wasn't such a good idea, because I made a really good discovery. So what I would suggest when you've done this bit that you're just watching now is stick it down with hot glue, hot melt glue gun stuff, you know what I mean. Can't think what it's called. And just to make sure it's completely sealed to the tip of your pyramid, so that when you pour in your next layer of resin, it's not going to seep inside the bottle, to keep it completely hollow. And like I said, you will find out later on exactly why, and it's quite good actually, quite a good discovery I found doing this one. Yeah, so there I am putting the super glue in. This is the stage where you need your hot melt glue gun. Put plenty in so that when you press your bottle into it, it forms a good seal. So now I'm going to follow the same mixing process for the next layer that I did before, but I'm not showing you it all each time. And I've added emerald green pigment. It's PearlEx pigment. Emerald green. Really carefully so that, again, it doesn't go down the side, the edges that I'm not using yet. I didn't want any resin on those. So just slowly let it fill up. And you can't really see on this particular angle, but it was starting to fill the bottle up as well from the inside, which I thought was absolutely fine at the time. But I was expecting the plan was that the bottle would stay in there for the casing, for the battery pack and the lights. But I did find that the bottle comes out with a special trick, which you'll find out soon. And yeah, that's why I've been telling you don't use the super glue, make sure there's a seal. Now I'm just adding some fish tank beads, I think they're called. They're like little clear glass beads, like little water droplets, and I really like the texture that you get from those in the resin. It makes it look like this kind of bubbles in a way, but nice big bubbles. Just pushing them all down, letting them sink into the resin. I could have put them in first and then put the resin over them, but I felt that if I did it that way around, I'd be more likely to get air trapped in between all those little beads, and I didn't want air to be trapped. So that's why I'm adding the beads after the resin. So now I'm just going to add another quick blast of hot air, just to get rid of any little bubbles that are lingering. And there you see, I was trying to get rid of some of that resin that had seeped into the inside of the bottle. Hindsight is a wonderful thing. I can't wait to do my next one now though, so that I can not make those mistakes. So here I've just got some clear resin. It's a bit bright on this one, sorry, but you can just about see I'm adding some clear resin, but it's got silver glitter in, lots of silver glitter. I really am big fan of this TotalCast resin. It's just so, it levels out so beautifully and it cures so quickly. You only have to wait like 3 or 4 hours between doing your layers, which I really love. And the bubbles come out so easily as well if you just leave it. So there we are. I didn't have to manipulate it much, it just self-leveled really nicely. That is another thing I forgot to say. Make sure you've got get your spirit level out and make sure your mould is completely level, because you don't want a wonky pyramid. Now I'm going to add these flowers. It's called Status and it's a lovely bluey lilac-y colour and I really do like it. So I'm just stacking it all around. I've left the stems long rather than trimming them first. It just helps me to move them around if necessary. And I'm just squeezing them in. Don't worry too much about them being squeezed in. It's fine. Right, while you're watching me do that, let me just tell you something that I discovered that's really important. I should have told you it before now, really. You need to be extremely careful with your heat gun. Only use it a minimal amount because those plastic bottles, they melt really quick. And I did have one of the sides collapsing a little bit, and that's what has caused in the finished result this kind of the level that I've just done turned out a little bit wonky, and it still looks fine, but I wasn't completely happy with it, and that was because I'd overheated it and the bottle started to distort, and also if I'd taken it any further it would have got holes in it as well, and you don't want that. So just be really careful with your heat gun. You really don't need it very much at all with this resin. Like I keep saying, the bubbles tend to let themselves out. So we're nearly done. I'll probably speed this up a little bit. Now I'm adding the resin. I'm pouring it straight over the dried flowers. I didn't treat the dried flowers first. I know some people seal them, and I do sometimes as well. I sometimes give them a spray with varnish, but I found that I didn't need to with this. The bubbles were not a problem, they just came to the top. Now I've used Flamingo Pink, PearleX Flamingo Pink for this, because I like pink and green together. The only thing I would say, and I will keep, as we go along, I will say what I would do differently next time. Next time I do it, I wouldn't add as much pigment because I felt with the finished result, I kind of lost a little bit of the detail of the flowers. I couldn't see them as much as I would have liked to. So just be careful with the colour. Don't use too much pigment. Right, once you've got your resin in and your flowers in, you need to just squeeze that lollipop stick in between the edges of the mould and the flowers, just to make sure there's no air bubbles trapped and to make sure that your flowers are completely coated in the resin. I will be pouring a little bit more resin on top of this. I just wanted to kind of half fill it and make sure that all those little bubbles were gone. And quick heat, not too much, don't want any melted bottles. And now I'm just putting in the rest of my pink resin, and I made it a little bit darker even on this bit, and I wish I hadn't. I wanted that kind of ombre effect where the darker was just seeping down through the lighter, but it was worth a try, and I think the finished pyramid does look beautiful, but like I said before, I just wish I'd done it lighter. Right, so now I'm adding the lights, and they don't need to be in yet, but the battery pack does need to be in there because it's a bit snug the way it fits inside the bottle, which is a good thing. It means it's not going to fall out, but because when you put the battery pack in, it changes the shape of the bottle very slightly. I didn't want to get to the stage where it's surrounded by resin and it won't bend. So I'm doing it now, and then the battery pack, when it's all finished, will fit in fine. These lights just go on forever. They're really good lights. They just the wire just bends nicely and you can just stuff it all in and it's no problem at all. You don't really damage them. You know, I mean, it's very possible that you could just put these lights straight into the resin, but I didn't want to risk it. Also, I wanted to have the option of being able to take the lights out if they ever stop working and just put some new ones in. So the way I've designed this pyramid, they can all be taken out at any time. You can just access them easily. They just go on and on and on and on. So many lights. I think this is a string of 50 lights, and I will put a link in the description for you. So here we are, we've reached the battery pack, and I'm just going to pop it in, and you'll see how it does slightly bend the bottle. There we are. So now once the resin is filled up, that bottle will stay in that shape. I'm just moving the flowers around to make sure I'm happy with them. And then I'll leave it to set for another 4 hours. Right, on to the next layer. So I'm just adding a little bit of clear resin, just a little bit, about half a centimetre I would say. And what I'm going to do is place the next layer of texture on, which is like wood shavings. I haven't got the packet near me to check exactly what they're called, but they're like, yeah, they're just like the curly wood shavings, dyed green, and I really loved the way they turned out. But what I wanted to do was make sure that I just placed them onto the thin layer of clear resin so that they stay still, basically. Because if I'd have just put the full thickness of this layer in clear resin and then put the wood shavings on, there they are. Oh, there we go, there's the packet. If I just put the wood shavings into the deep resin, I wasn't sure, but I thought they might just float to the top. So I'm just sticking them down in this thin layer of resin, and then when that's had chance to cure a little bit, I'll fill it up with more clear resin and they'll stay in position. Okay, it's had a few hours to set, and now they're really secure, they're not going to float to the top, and I'm filling it up with resin just to cover up, clear resin, sorry, just to cover up right up to the top of where those wood shavings are. And I've put a picture at the other side just to show you how it looks when it's finished, because I was really quite excited about this part. This part I wouldn't change. This was one of the successes of the pyramid, my favourite part. Right, for this next layer of resin, I'm taking the lights out, and I will explain why in a moment. There is a good reason. But yeah, I've taken the lights out, and I'm just going to trim down all of those stems so we've got a nice smooth surface. So earlier on, when I slightly distorted the bottle by overheating it, the top level of the bottle lowered, and I need it to be higher for the next layer of resin. So it's not a problem. It's quite good that it happened, because it means I get to show you what happens in this situation. All I'm going to do is get some aluminium tape and stick it around the inside to form a barrier, and then no problem, it'll just come off afterwards, and won't have any resin seeping into the bottle. Right, now we're ready for the next layer. I'm just mixing the resin again, and I've decided to use another green, emerald green layer. So there's my emerald green pigment, and I'm going to add some green glitter as well. I like to balance out the colours that I've used, so because I've already used the green and the white earlier on, I want to do a little green layer and a white layer at the bottom, and I just find that it balances the whole piece out in the end. You can tell me if you agree when you see the finished result. I was a bit unsure, to be honest, about when I first put that white tip in. I thought, oh, is white going to look okay? But I'm actually really pleased with the finished result. So there goes the glitter. I've put loads in. The reason I've put loads in is because I didn't want to be able to see the battery pack through the layer, because we're at that stage where we've got that silvery coloured wire in the bottle and the battery pack. So I've gone for much darker layers right at the bottom. Right, the green layer's cured, and now I'm just taking the tape off, and it comes off, you'll see it comes off really easily, no problem. And now it's time to start planning for the base, and this here that you can see is going to be the lid that will cover up the battery pack, and it's going to be held in place with magnets. And I'm really pleased with how this works. It really did work really well. So I've marked the places where the magnets are going to go, because I've already cut the holes for the magnets in my lid, and I'm going to stick my magnets on with super glue. Be careful of your fingers. I wasn't. So there's my little magnets. You do need to be careful at this stage to make sure each magnet goes on the right way around, so that they're all, because obviously you've got a side of the magnet that repels and a side that attracts, and so you need to make sure they're all the same way around. And then when you put your magnets in the lid, which I'll show you in a moment, they need to be the right way around too, so that they will attract to these magnets. So you just need to test it, make sure you're doing it right as you go along. Right, so I'm just making the lid, and I've got that piece of card that I'd already measured out and cut the holes for the magnet with, and I'm just placing it onto some black vinyl, sticky back vinyl. You don't have to use that, that's just what I had, and I thought it would do the trick nicely. And I've stuck it on, and I'm adding my magnets, which I marked the top of the stick where I knew the stick of magnets. I put a mark on once I'd tested against the other magnets that it was going to attract. and then I made sure each magnet was put on the right way around. I've learnt this through making many mistakes in other things with magnets. I do use magnets a lot, and it's such a pain if you get them in the wrong way around and you finish your job and they don't stick together. So yeah, that's what I'm doing there. I'm not sticking them in, they're sticking to the vinyl, and the holes that I've made are quite, you can see I'm having to press quite hard. It's quite a snug fit, which is good really, it really keeps it in place. As you can see, I'm just trimming the corners so I can fold the sides over and we'll get a nice clean corner. Right, for the other side, I've got this really cool felt, which is sticky backed. So it's black sticky backed felt, and that's the side that will touch the surface wherever you're putting your pyramid. So it's going to protect the surface from any scratches or anything, and it also gives it a nice, lovely finish. And I'm just pressing it down, and then I'm just going to quickly cut it out. This sticky back excuse me, this sticky backed felt works really well on coasters as well, for the bottom of your coasters. Okay, back to the pyramid. So the super glue for the magnets has dried, and I'm adding the white final layer so that it covers the magnets and keeps them firmly in place. I forgot to say that I have added another piece of aluminium tape for the barrier again. I had to take the other one off so that I could draw the marks on for the magnets, but it's really quick and easy to do, so I just put another one back on before I started this white layer. Okay, so it's the next day. I've taken the tape off, and here's where I made the really great discovery. I was heating the white edges up to see if I could just soften, rather than just sanding them, just soften that resin and make it melt down. But it didn't. But while I was heating it, the plastic bottle started to distort away from the resin, and at first I thought it was a complete disaster, but then I thought, no, this is really good because it means I can take the plastic bottle out if I just heat it up. And that's what I did. I've heated it up. It was a little bit tricky to get out because of the incident that happened right at the beginning where the resin filled up at the bottom. So what I'm doing is I'm going to snip it with scissors all the way around in a moment, you'll see. And then just get my knife in there and trim around the bottom and it will all come out. But next time I do this, like I told you right at the beginning of this long video, I'll make sure the bottom of the bottle is completely sealed before I put in any resin, and then when we get to this stage the whole bottle will just pop out really easy, and then you'll have your lovely smooth sides. This looks quite brutal and dangerous, but I didn't cut my fingers, I promise. If you're watching this and you're not an adult, you do need to get an adult to do this part, definitely. There we go. So much cleaner inside with no plastic bottle, which just feels so much better somehow. I do need to just, I didn't show you, but I do need to just sand with a nail file around that opening just to make it nicely finished off. I'm just putting the lights back in, just shoving them in. There's no set pattern that I followed, I just shoved them in. And now that battery pack fits in nicely because of the steps we took earlier on. And now you're going to see just how easily that lid just clips on. That's it, it's on and it's secure, that won't fall off now. And so I'm just putting some of those little rubber feet on, finishing it all off before I take it out of the mould, just because it's easier while it's in that nice stand. Right, we're nearly at demolding time. It's quite exciting. I'm just taking the mould out of the base, and you can see that the baby powder really did stop it from sticking. I was really pleased that that happened. And now I'm going to turn the lights on just for the full effect, and that just clips back on, and I'm going to demold it. It was, I could have done with someone there to film me demolding it, because it's always hard to keep the pyramid or whatever you're doing in the camera view, but I tried my best. There we go, you can see it now. I always find that bit so exciting. Now this mould, I don't know whether you just spotted it, the mould has a bit of a wonky end to it. The tip of the pyramid always comes out a little bit wonky. That's why I'm not going to give you a link to this mould, because I wouldn't recommend it. So I just always need to sand that little wonky bit off and polish it up again. But I'm really pleased with the way it turned out. So here we have it. I'm so pleased with how it turned out. Like with everything, and I'm sure you'll all agree with me, there's always something I would change. And I did mention earlier on that pink layer. With the flowers just got lost in it. You can't see the details of the flowers. The pink looks great, you just can't see the flowers. So I would use less pigment next time. What I do love is the white at the bottom, how it really balances the whole thing out. And here we are in complete darkness, just to show you how much light comes from this little lamp. It's a lovely night light. I think if I'd just used that less of that pink pigment, I think to be able to see the flowers better at this point would be so much better. I can't wait to start on my next pyramid to make all those changes that I've planned. And here's a close-up. You can see those really fantastic wood shavings really well there, and here again in the daylight. That's one of my favourite bits. My favourite layer is the wood shavings layer. I'll be doing that again. I got those from Charmed Cards and Crafts, and I think it was in the sale. I'm not sure. They might not have it anymore. But I'll get as much as I can from Charmed Cards and Crafts, because it's just a fantastic website. In fact, I am on the design team there, so I kind of am biased. And here we go again, and this is in the daytime with the lights on, just to show you the different effect you get with the lights on when it's not dark. So if you've enjoyed this tutorial, please click the like button and the subscribe button, of course, and don't forget to ring the bell, because then you'll get notifications as soon as I upload another video, and you'll have to see what comes next. Thank you for watching.